All right, good morning. We have a quorum. We'll go ahead and open the meeting. Call to order. And Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
Supervisor Long? Here. Supervisor Bennett?
Here.
Supervisor Foy?
Here.
Mayor Morgan?
Here.
Supervisor Parks? Here. Councilmember Ramirez? Councilmember Sharkey?
Present.
Mayor Washburn? Here. Supervisor Zaragoza?
Here.
And Councilmember Brennan.
Present. We do have a quorum. If we'll move, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 4 on the, is minutes from May 10th.
Second.
Okay. Any objections or corrections to the minutes? Madam Clerk, seeing no objections, that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. We'll move to, okay, agenda review. Any changes? Okay, not seen any. Okay, we will let the agenda stand. Any comments from board members in relation to items not on the agenda here this morning? Great. Okay. Then we will save our comments for the items. We'll move to item number 7. It's a public hearing regarding the Air Pollution Control District's proposed fiscal year 2011-2012. Mr. Villegas, welcome.
Chair Brennan, members of the board, I'm Mike Villegas, Air Pollution Control Officer. As you're aware, the district's budget has two components, the operating budget and the pass-through grants budget. Now, I'm going to focus on the operating budget. As the pass-through grant budget, all expenditures have an equivalent amount of revenue, and they do not affect our fund balance in any manner. The district's budget is just over $8.5 million and is composed of an operating budget of nearly $8 million and a pass-through grant fund budget of approximately $585,000. The district budget also includes 51 full-time equivalent positions. We're projecting a net cost, excluding contingency, of approximately $133,000. However, as in past years, the budget includes $109,000 in revenue from fines, and this is because we do not want to set a ticket quota by increasing that level. But when you look at the 5-year average from fines and penalties, it's been averaging $300,000 a year. So the likely result is a balanced budget or a small net savings. Expenditures are going to be down by $165,000 from the current fiscal year, and revenues are projected to decrease by $140,000 per year. We have one increment 2 request, and I'll discuss these items in detail. On the increment 2 item, once again we have $25,000 available for some type of motor vehicle emission reduction grant program. And we worked with the Transit Incentive Program last year. It seems that we might not have a champion for that strategy in the upcoming fiscal year. However, County GSA and the Clean Cities Coalition have been coming towards the district and letting us know that they're very interested in working with us on electric vehicle infrastructure to support the new Chevy Volt and Nissan Leaf rollouts. On the expenditure side, we're seeing a total decrease of $165,000. Salaries and employee benefits are going to be down by nearly $130,000 due to staffing changes. Services supply costs are up by $107,000, and this is largely due to an increase in the cost allocation plan of approximately $130,000. Also, we have some increase in our professional services account dealing with software development projects. Fixed assets are going to be down by approximately $143,000 during this year, and that's because we recently were finishing up work on the atmospheric profiler out at the Simi Valley landfill, and that was a major expenditure in in the current fiscal year that won't be reoccurring. Here's a graphic showing our expenditures, and as you can see, salaries and employee benefits account for 77% of our expenditures. And the good news, as I said before, is that those expenditures are dropping in the upcoming fiscal year. On the revenue side, we're seeing some decrease on the permit emission renewal fees for emission fees. And this is largely due, we had some business closures, but the larger issue here is the fact that under state regulation, what's called Tier 0 engines had to be replaced. And these are old, dirty diesel engines. They replaced with new, lower emission engines. And of course, then the emission fees drop with that. Also, we're seeing low interest earnings due to the economic situation we're all seeing right now. This slide shows our revenue. There's really three major sources: the DMV fees at $2.8 million, permit fees at $2.57 million, and our federal grant at $1.2 million. We also have some miscellaneous free revenue. That's our source test observation fees, our variance fees, and our Title V certification fees for the large facilities. They're just over $250,000 total. And then we also, in miscellaneous revenue, have our interest earnings and our monitoring contracts for services to other air districts. As I said, we do have a net cost of $133,000, but we do believe that it's going to be covered by additional revenue from fines and penalties. And if not, we have a very healthy fund balance that would allow us to make an adjustment over time. In the big picture, the DMV fees are covering all associated programs related to motor vehicles, including our planning, our inventory, and our monitoring program. Fees and grants are not quite covering all the stationary source program costs, but with the revenue from fines, as they have in the past few years, and we're projecting in the future that we should have a balanced budget on that side also. The 2% fee increase did help bridge that gap. And our EPA grants. We're working very closely with the National Association of Clean Air Agencies, the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association, to keep pressing the congressional delegation to secure our federal funding. One caveat there is with these new air quality standards, and EPA is looking to reallocate the grants in a more equitable fashion. There are some districts that are attainment that are receiving grant funds. There are some districts in Northern California that are not receiving any funds, even though they are non-attainment, similar to Ventura County. So there's going to be some reallocation. We expect to have some reduction in our potential reduction in our federal grant. Amazingly, in spite of the state budget crisis, the state subvention funds have been stable at $200,000 a year, and we continue to watch that. We're doing our best to maximize the administrative funds that come with the Carl Moyer and the school bus programs to help pay for those programs without any impact on other district funds. And our goal is to maintain that balanced budget in the upcoming fiscal year. This slide shows the fund balance allocations proposed for the upcoming fiscal year. And when you look at the fund balance, even if we were hit paying the net cost out of the fund balance, you can see that the fund balance would still be above the total district operating budget, which is an incredibly good position to be in as we move into federal grant reallocation. It's going to give us time to adjust to this issue over time, and we believe we can make some staffing changes to deal with the federal grant reduction. And this last slide is just a projection of where we think the fund balance is going to be. It does not have the federal grant reallocation in it, but as you can see, if we make some staffing changes or our projection is we're going to maintain a healthy fund balance for the foreseeable future. And that's all I have on the budget.
Questions?
Just one.
Mr. Morgan?
Good job, Mike. It's funny to bounce the balls around to keep everything balanced. You're getting rid of the computers, replacements, all your computers. What are you going to do with the old computers?
We'll look into that, we're still looking into that, but I know one time we did donate a large batch to Rio Mesa High School.
I was going to suggest that. Look, there's schools and boys and girls clubs and things like that that have computer areas for their kids, and that might be a good place to start also. But talking to the school districts would be the first shot. I'd just recommend.
Yeah, that's something we've done in the past, and we'll certainly look into that. I would like to point out, though, our computers we really ride them. We're over 5 years old. So,
Boys and girls club.
yeah. So reliability may be an issue, but
Sure.
Member Marguerite?
Good morning. I have a question. You stated that some Northern California agencies do not receive federal funding? Is
that's
that
correct.
Well, how did that happen? Is that historic, or?
It's
did they do
been
something-
historic. It was really historic. They started out funding non-attainment areas, and they haven't touched the reallocation for decades. And as the standards tightened, and they were certainly Yola Solano is a perfect example. The suburbs have just, they've grown suburbs everywhere up there, and their air quality didn't improve as fast as some of the areas. The standards were tightened, so now they ended up becoming non-attainment, yet they receive no federal funding. You have the Santa Barbara district, which attains the standards and is receiving federal funding, and that really led to quite an interesting discussion amongst the Capcoa APCOs on how we're going to address that.
And Mike, we traditionally have a second hearing on this.
That's correct. That would be on June 28th. There will be a second meeting this month. Under state law, the district has to have 2 public hearings on the budget. So actually, you end up continuing this hearing till June 28th.
So we'll just continue this and then adopt it on the 28th.
That's correct.
Right. Just want to confirm that. Everybody comfortable? And then okay. No speaker cards?
I just want to say one thing as we're getting ready to approve this. I mean, steadily you've been able to keep your salaries and benefits under control by not filling positions, essentially. And I want to commend you for that. That's good. And at the same time, I always want to raise that question. I just want to make sure that we're getting the mission done. The responsibility we have. I think we are, because I think the heavy lifting was done early, and in terms of trying to get us there. But just to make sure that you feel comfortable alerting us to any places where there is a critical shortage developing because of not filling key positions. But overall, I think you've done a remarkable job every year, just coming in and constantly adjusting the organization down slightly, and still passing out the responsibilities in such a way that everything gets done. So nice job on that.
Well, first off, thank you very much, and also like the county of Ventura helped us out with pension reform too. Certainly, that's not insignificant. So it wasn't entirely an Air District effort, but the other big player is the staff. So many staff have picked up additional work. They've become more efficient, and that's allowed us to survive in this economic climate.
And certainly in the next 3 years, we're going to have 4% increases in cost that staff won't feel as a 4% pay increase, but it'll be a 4% cost increase to the district, because retirement costs are going to go up 4% each year for the next 3 years. And we all have to recognize that's really a pay increase from the standpoint of your retirement is getting more secure as a result of that funding, but you don't have the benefit that you had this past time of having that necessarily having that 3% cut there. So that'll be a greater challenge for you. So it's one more reason why it's
and actually that fund balance projection I showed you did include retirement increases.
great. Good. Thank you.
I have
Supervisor Parks?
a question. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Regarding mitigation fees, are you anticipating that if waste management is approved, you'll have additional mitigation fees, and do you have a specific plan for them?
Well, certainly, yeah, that's the current understanding, is that we will be receiving mitigation fees, very similar to what happened with the Tolan landfill.
And I remember Councilmember Gunderson back then was very adamant that those fees stay in the Santa Clara Valley on that one, and I would anticipate this would be similar.
I would assume that we're going to hear that they would like them, certainly East County, Moore Park, Simi Valley area.
And so I guess it's all rather conjecture right now, but I would imagine that there'd be specific programs that would be enacted for that airshed, I guess we'd call it, huh?
In that area, definitely we would. Just like we did with Tolan, the majority of the funds went into the Santa Clara Valley.
And there were specific measures that were pretty doable out there, the ag generators,
That's the one
to
thing
be
in the
able to
Santa Clara
convert
Valley,
them.
there was so
But
much.
we don't really have, it would be interesting to see what we're looking at for that area if that comes to pass.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, one thing with the Simi Valley landfill expansion is the fact that they are considering expanding their production of liquefied, well, actually starting to produce liquefied natural gas out there, so there may be additional funds that could be put forward towards switching that hauling fleet over to liquefied natural gas for additional emission reductions.
And that would reduce emissions in that area specifically.
Yes, it would.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further questions?
I just want to thank, Ms. Villegas and staff for excellent, budget, and, it takes a lot of work to put a budget together. So I want to thank the staff for that.
Yes, I'd like to personally thank Nancy Mendoza and Leonie Macareg. They could do a great job of putting our budget together every year.
Great. Okay.
Good job.
All right, Board, thank you. Mike, thanks. We'll continue this to the hearing on the 28th. Second reading.
Second.
Okay, any objections to, seeing none? We will, second reading on the 28th then. Thank you. Item 8.
District staff is proposing to adopt amendments to our Rule 7419 graphic arts to reduce reactive organic compound emissions from commercial printing operations. These proposed amendments are classified as a feasible measure under the California Clean Air Act. Rule 7419 would place limits on the ROC content of inks, coatings, adhesives, and solutions, adhesive solutions, fountain solutions, and solvent cleaners. The last significant revision we had to the rule was in 2001. Since that time, vendors have developed new lower ROC content solvent cleaners and fountain solutions. So today we're before your board to implement tighter requirements on both the fountain solutions and the solvent cleaners. These requirements have already been implemented in some of the largest air districts in the state, including the San Joaquin Valley, South Coast, Bay Area, and Sacramento metropolitan districts. Therefore, our printing industry will have the benefit of seeing implementation of these requirements in a neighboring county before they actually have to do it. The proposal would affect 32 commercial printing operations currently under permit from the district, and we're estimating, based on permitted emissions, we'll see an emission reduction of approximately 50 tons per year, which is not insignificant. Bay Area did a cost-effectiveness analysis on the proposal, and they came up with a cost of 17 cents per pound of reactive organic compounds reduced, which is quite cost-effective when you compare it to the best available control technology threshold of $9 per pound, which is the upper bound. We conducted a public consultation meeting on October 14th of last year, a public workshop on January 25th, and on March 22nd, the advisory committee recommended adoption of these proposed amendments. We received one industry comment concerned with the higher cost of low ROC blanket wash for newsprint operations. We contacted several newspapers already subject to the requirements, including the San Bernardino Sun, the Orange County Register, the Stockton Record, and Dow Jones Newswires. We found out that they were using water-reducible cleaners diluted with water at a ratio of 4 to 1 can substantially reduce the cost of this low RO emission technology. In addition, the Printing Industries Association of California does not have any concerns with the proposal because, in their words, they're uniform with the other air districts. And that concludes my presentation.
Yes, sir.
Looking at this, like I said, we've got, especially in Oxnard, we've got a lot of big, large printing houses and stuff, and I went and asked some questions on this. So these cleaners, some people were telling me out of LA when they've done some of this, it takes 3 and 4 times as long to do their cleanup on their presses and things. So if we balance if we balance the cost of what this is going to do to our businesses, where these people can say if it gets that expensive, I just move it someplace else, or what's the deal here?
You know, when we talked to the printers in Los Angeles, there was one in particular in Burbank area, they felt it was working quite well for them, and they were quite pleased with the fact that they didn't have an odor issue anymore, and that from an OSHA standpoint, they weren't working with toxic.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that we're not squeezing to move people, because it gets so onerous, here to do that.
No, well, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think under California Clean Air Act, this is going to end up basically being statewide. When you look at the Bay Area, South Coast, San Joaquin, and Sacramento, they've got already well over 75% of the state's population using this. So, I mean, if the LA Times and all these other papers can do it.
Because you look at the printing, it's all moved to the Midwest and everything, because there's so many other expenses that add to it, and we're talking about a lot of jobs and things, so.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions. I have the same concerns that Mr. Floyd does, because everything we do, we're chasing businesses out of California. But if we have a way of doing this that's not maybe cost effective, like you're saying that some are accepting it down south, are we proactive in showing them how they can do it in a more cost effective manner as an agency?
Well, certainly when the newsprint people came to us, we went out and contacted these other papers, got back to them on the exact cleaners that these other papers were using. So in a way, yes, we are providing assistance.
Well, the small, not just the newspapers, but the small-time printers, same thing, you'll be talking with them, telling them...
If they run into a problem, certainly, and like I said...
Well, they're going to run into a problem, but if you're proactive, we'll tell them ahead of time that this is what you could do to reduce that cost and to become efficient.
Our staff report, well, we don't endorse any products. It does include lists of products that could be used.
Okay.
And the other thing is, we would definitely interface with the Printing Industries Association, who didn't have any concerns, who is the representative, especially of those small printers.
Does the 17% cost effectiveness include the record-keeping requirements? I see some that there's a daily record-keeping and a monthly record-keeping burden on these small businesses, and I don't know how cost-effective that's going to be for them.
The record-keeping requirements are not changing today. Those have been there. I got to tell you, the daily record-keeping staff would step away from that if EPA would allow us to. They insist on the daily sometimes. We have prepared in the past record-keeping forms for some of these small businesses to use to help them through it, and we've had implementation workshops. But I think most of them know now how to keep the records.
And everybody's in compliance with that?
I'm not aware of any compliance issues with print shops at this time. Okay. No.
Okay, thanks.
Just very quickly, I note that there was a meeting with do I have this right, with an advisory committee? Or you met, there was contact with Dr. Bonetto, who was with the Printing Industries
Yes.
Association, and they said they didn't have a problem?
That's correct.
Okay. And we only got one comment?
That's correct.
And what was that comment?
That was from the Ventura County Star, trying to work to find a cost-effective alternative in the low ROC category. So that's why we went out and talked to the other newspapers and got back to them with some other solvents they could try.
Was that the meeting, the contact with Dr. Bonetto, was that one of a series of contacts, or was that the only one? Do you know?
That was the only one.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I'd like to just follow up on Member Ramirez's comments just a bit. Like, we have a history of this district of reaching out to the industry and certainly trying to do everything we possibly can to try to soften the blow or basically educate. And it certainly seems like we continue doing that. And as we hear the comments up here, we're all concerned about keeping businesses viable. I mean, we all saw the article in the paper the other day, I think, about the poor screen printing people that buy the shirts and screen print them, and next thing you know, they're in the, I mean, that's the kind of stuff we don't want to find ourselves in. I mean, it's difficult enough as it is, but I think staff's been very, very good about that outreach, so I just want to make sure that continues, and it certainly looks like that's the case. Supervisor Parks?
Yeah, and no, we don't want to argue with people who buy ink by the barrel, but if the Star is concerned about it, is their concern continuing, or?
I believe right now, they're in a situation where they're using something that's working for them.
Okay, and it works for us too?
Yes, and there was an additional cost to the Star, but on the cost effectiveness calculations, it worked out quite well.
Okay, thank you.
Any further board comments? Pleasure of the board?
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Okay, second. Any objections? Okay, noted by Member Fue. All right. Item carries. Thank you. Mike, we'll move to the next item.
All right, this is the California Cleaner Act update. It should be popping up just any second now. Pursuant to the California Cleaner Act, every 3 years, air districts are required to assess their progress towards attaining the state ambient air quality standards. And for this reporting period, we have the time period 2006 through 2008. The plan must discuss emission and air quality trends, control measures that we've adopted since the last plan update, a review of every feasible measure, which is really a rulebook comparison with other air districts, and the plan should finally identify and correct any deficiencies. Ventura County is non-attainment for both the state 1-hour and 8-hour ozone standards, and these standards are currently more stringent than the federal requirements. The 1-hour standard was set to protect the public from adverse health effects from short-term exposures to higher levels of ozone, and the 8-hour standard was set to protect the public from adverse health effects for a more prolonged period of exposure at a lower level. As you can see from this slide, the peak 1-hour ozone readings are dropping significantly over time in Ventura County. You can also see that in the West County, we've attained the state 1-hour standard. This next slide shows the decrease in the peak 8-hour readings, and once again, we're making substantial progress over time. This slide shows the percent decrease at each of our monitoring stations over the time period 1988 through 2008. As you can see, it's quite dramatic. It ranges from nearly 45% at the El Rio site to 29% at Piru. And these are the percent decreases at the monitoring sites for the 8-hour standard. Once again, fairly dramatic decreases. This slide shows the decrease in both the 1-hour in red and the 8-hour in teal. These are the number of days over the standard in each year, and you can see that we're making steady progress. And the yellow line shows that even as population grows, air quality continues to improve in this county. This is the one that makes me feel the best. This is projected emissions of reactive organic gases and nitrogen oxides. The teal line is reactive organic gases, and you can see while it is starting to level off, it still decreases through the year 2020. On the nitrogen oxide, we're seeing significant decreases out through 2020, and what it tells us is we're going to continue to see air quality improvement. Part of our analysis of every feasible measure, we examined 20 rules in the district rule book. We identified 4 for potential enhancement, and we identified 3 potential new rules. to meet the all feasible measures requirements. This slide shows the 4 rules that would be considered for amendments to coming for your board. I want to assure you that one thing we're doing, as these rules are adopted in other air districts, we're making sure that they're being implemented without significant problems before adopting them in Ventura County to try to minimize any economic impacts on our local businesses. These are the 3 potential new rules, and once again, be assured we'll work closely with industry and the public to make sure that we minimize the cost, and we make sure that they're feasible, and we minimize any economic impacts on our business. During the public review period, we received only 1 comment in regard to the typographical error. It was from the Western States Petroleum Association. We also met with VECITA, their policy committee. I gave them a presentation. They had no concerns, and made a presentation to VCOG. So basically the plan is things continue to improve, and we're projecting additional improvements in the out years. And that's all I have. I'll be happy to take questions.
Okay, any questions besides thank you to the Western States Petroleum Association for the great editing work and reading every sentence in this document? Okay. Thank you, Mike. I know this is, we're making headway, again. It just reminds us again really what this board's purview is, and that is public health through air quality. So, pleasure of the board.
So moved.
Okay. And second, okay, second by Member Sharkey. Any objections to the recommended action? Okay. Seeing none, unanimous. Thank you. Mike, we'll move to the next item.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? On that last one of the potential measures is to adopt a new rule to control flaring at oil and gas facilities.
Yeah.
How do you see that alternative? What alternative is there?
They could treat the gas. That's one option, because generally it's their flaring gas that is of poor quality, too poor to be tied into the SoCal gas network. So they flare it. A perfect example would be La Conchita flare by the Highway 101. We get a lot of comments on that flare. And one of the alternatives would be to take that gas, do some treatment, and run it through a microturbine, generate electricity, sell that into the grid. And I know that company did an analysis of that, and their payback was quite short. So it could be quite cost effective.
Good idea. Thank you.
And of course, on a foggy evening, driving through La Conchita, it has that eerie kind of science fiction-y kind of look. So it might be something people want to come and film. Who knows? But
It's a lighthouse.
it is. That's
All the
it.
ships on it.
That's it. That's right. That's right. Well, thank you. Okay, we'll move to the next item. Thank you.
Okay, the Agricultural Assistance Program was established in 2005 to help farm operators comply with state air quality regulations. It's funded pursuant to Assembly Bill 923, which is the DMV fee bill. Today we are recommending your approval of $81,368 in assistance funding to help 4 farm operations repower 5 diesel agricultural pump engines. 2 of the pumps are going to be repowered with electric motors, which is quite good, and 3 will be repowered with new lower emission diesel engines. The combined emission reductions would be 2.4 tons per year of ozone precursors, 0.09 tons per year of toxic diesel particulate, which is a carcinogen, and 155 tons of carbon dioxide. Your approval would authorize me to sign the grant agreements and make any administrative changes. That's all I have.
Okay. And this is a program that we've been utilizing in other areas of the county also. Pleasure of the board. Okay, questions? All right, Member Ramirez?
Could you, thank you, could you just maybe just review how a project is chosen? Is it a competitive process? Is it based on financial need?
Basically how it works, we use the Carl Moyer guidelines, and what we do is if you get your application in, when we put out the RFP, and you meet the cost effectiveness threshold, you're going to receive your funding. And that's how it works. So we make sure they're cost effective. Now, there is a contribution from the farm operator towards this. It's not entirely, let's say you're going to replace that diesel engine, and one option would be to rebuild it. So they pay the rebuild costs, we're going to pay the difference towards getting that new lower emission diesel or electric motor.
Did any operator apply and not receive?
We're going through a new RFP right now, and right now we are going to be oversubscribed, so we'll use cost as part of the criteria for that, cost effectiveness.
And the decisions made based on the best cost-effective?
Yeah, we look at it as we're purchasing clean air. So you want to get as much clean air for dollar spent.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Great.
Good question. Thank you for reminding us. Okay. Right, pleasure of the board. Second by Member Sharkey. Okay, any objections to this item? Again, seeing none, thank you. Unanimous. And we'll move to item 11. Grant funding for lower emission school bus program, which we're excited about.
Chair Brennan, members of the board, Stan Cowan, Air Quality Engineer. This is a request for our school bus retrofit grant program, and basically we reduce emissions from school bus diesel engines, the particulate in particular. So far, we've accepted all requests for school bus retrofits because these are more cost-effective according to the state guidelines. You can do about 7 or 8 retrofits for the price of one school bus replacement. So we've been really emphasizing that part of the program. There are 2 grant requests in this proposal, in this agenda item. First, the Ocean View School District has requested $13,980 for a Donaldson pulse cleaning equipment, which is used for maintenance of the 8 school bus retrofits they've already purchased. This is a legitimate cost according to the state guidelines, which we follow under the lower emission school bus program, which allows up to $2,500 per retrofit. This proposal will restore some decrease in funding that we authorized by your board in December, so that this will keep them under the $20,000 cap, which is the maximum allowed per school bus retrofit. And the second part of this request is an additional school bus retrofit for Moore Park Unified School District at a cost of $16,632. We will amend the existing grant agreement that we already have with them, and if this retrofit is funded by your board, there will be a total of about 131 diesel filters that have been funded by this program since 2005, and the emission reduction we're talking about is over 5 tons of toxic particulate matter since 2020. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Member Ramirez?
Oh, I just think this is great, because for any of us who've been stuck behind a bus, a school bus, and you better not move, you're going to get a huge ticket.
Yeah.
This is great. Thank you.
I like the idea of retrofitting existing buses instead of replacing them. I mean, it sort of fits that concept of decreasing our carbon footprint also. There's a lot of cost in terms of the whole bus, just because you're trying to get a new engine and you're replacing the whole bus. So moving this direction certainly feels much more cost effective. We're buying more clean air, like you said. So nice job with that.
Member Sharkey, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I'm just burning with curiosity here. What exactly is a Donaldson pulse cleaning unit? And what does it do?
Oh, sorry. It removes the ash from the filter. Over a period of time, the soot is burned off in the filter, but it collects the ash, which doesn't burn, and so they have to take it off the bus and put it on this unit, and then the ash is collected in a closed container, so it's not spread everywhere, and this way they can maintain the filters for longer periods of time.
It's a filter cleaning unit.
It's a filter cleaning.
I've never heard of it. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Glad we got figured out where that ash is coming from. Yeah, okay. Good. All right. Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay. Second by Member Morgan. Any objections?
One comment. What do you do with that ash? Is that hazardous waste?
You have to dispose of it carefully. You can't.
It's all
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Seeing no objections, item carries. Thank you. That is our final item. Any last board comments? Seeing none, thank you. We will adjourn to the meeting of June 28th for the second reading of the budget. Thank you for your work this morning. and standing committees upstairs after this, right away. Thank you.
Hey, Robert?